Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the second quarter. We're going to be talking a little bit about our prediction for the New Year's six bowl games. We're going to be talking about four of those. We covered two of them in the last episode, and then we're going to be talking about just two random bowls for this week. I'm your co-host Dalton Carty. This is your other co-host Jacob Eichenlob, and we'll go ahead and kick this off. You want to start with the
So my non-New Year's Six bowl, I got Iowa State versus Clemson. When I looked at the spread, it was Clemson -1. DJ Uiagalelei has not had the year everyone wanted him to have or expected him to have. And this is very rare territory for the Clemson Tigers. They're used to playing for national championships. Now they're playing in a bowl named after a toasted cheese snack, and it is just not good for them. And to make it worse, both of their coordinators have went to coach different schools.
Yeah, that's tough for them.
And
Dabo, you can't count out Dabo Swinney, one of the best coaches in NCAA.
He is a great coach. Not a great person, but a great coach. And Iowa State is currently sitting at 7-5. I think they got a very real chance to win the game. This game is obviously more important to the Cyclones than it is to the Tigers. But if they can knock off like a pretty recent powerhouse in a bowl game, they can maybe turn their program like upward a little bit, get some higher ranked recruits, and turn their program into like not necessarily a championship contender, but they could eventually win the Big 12. And then in the pick though, 100% going with Clemson.
Oh yeah,
24-14. And they're also going to cover the spread -1.
So my non-New Year's bowl game is actually the Alamo Bowl, Oregon versus Oklahoma. Oregon's coming off two devastating losses to Utah, and they need a bounce back win as they're kind of cold. The key for Oregon to winning is letting Anthony Brown use his legs, get outside of the hashes, and really just use his legs to get into space and run for yardage. For Oklahoma, they're coming off of two ranked losses as well. They're also a cold team heading into this. The key to victory for them is to stop Oregon on third down, as they're nearly 51% conversion on third down. Defense is going to be the key to success this game for both teams. I do have Oregon pulling this one out, though. I think it's going to be a 31-24 win for Oregon here in the Alamo Bowl. Oregon was a great football team all year. I mean, and so was Oklahoma. But I think it's going to be a little bit tougher for Oklahoma to kind of overcome, especially with a freshman quarterback.
Definitely. So for my next bowl, first New Year's Six bowl game for me, I got the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. When I got the information, the spread was Michigan State -2.5. MSU has had a very up and down year. They obviously started off 8-0, after knocking off their in-state rival, the Michigan Wolverines, who is now in the playoffs. After they beat Michigan, they began to fall apart, losing two of their next three. An upset loss to Purdue, then beating Maryland, then just getting absolutely throttled by Ohio State. And then I believe Kenneth Walker is opting out of this game so he can prepare for the NFL draft. And then over to Pitt, they had an amazing year, winning an AC championship. Kenny Pickett finished third in the Heisman race, and I'm pretty sure he's also going to opt out of this bowl game. So it's just going to be a very weird game, kind of a shitty New Year's Six game because both teams' Heisman candidate is not playing.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to go with Michigan State. I feel like it's easier to replace a running back than it is a quarterback. So Michigan State 31-20, covering the -2.5.
Not according to Oklahoma, though. It's a lot easier to replace a quarterback that is a running back. Kicking off my New Year's Six bowl, I have Ohio State versus Utah in the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, California. Ohio State's have arguably the best offense in the NCAA. Obviously, Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson are going top 15 this year, and then Jackson and Jigba Smith is probably going to go top 5 here in a few years. C.J. Stroud is a great quarterback, obviously, a Heisman candidate. They do have the advantage over Utah. Defense is being very similar in points given up, but that offense is just so explosive. Although Utah is on a 6-game win streak and outscoring their opponents 238-90, I think Ohio State has the advantage here. Unless Mika Tafua and Van Fillinger can make C.J. Stroud uncomfortable in the pocket, because he does not perform well when there's pressure in the pocket. As per the Michigan game, where Aiden Hutchinson put a lot of pressure on him.
Yeah, Hutchinson got pressure. Ojabo got to him. Speaking of that game, though, I have heard that Olave and Garrett Wilson might not play.
Yeah, we'll sit out for the for the NFL draft. So it's really going to depend on if they play. Obviously, those receivers are tough to replace. But
You got Julian Fleming though, and Marvin Harrison Jr. who can step up and
Yeah.
not obviously not be as good right away, but they can take
definitely
some
make
production.
an impact. Yeah.
I feel like though, if you're Utah, you've got to focus on Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Mm-hmm. And then Ohio State does have a pretty solid run game. Not the best in the NCAA like their receivers are, but still a pretty solid. I just think that if they can make C.J. Stroud uncomfortable in the pocket, then Utah's got a really good shot at taking this one, just as Michigan did. Obviously, Michigan's a better football team than Utah is.
Definitely.
But Utah is coming off of a huge win streak, and they're fired up for this game.
Definitely. So for my next bowl game, I have the PlayStation Fiesta Bowl. We got Notre Dame versus Oklahoma State. The spread was Notre Dame -2. The Fighting Irish haven't lost a game since their first loss to the Cincinnati Bearcats, who is now number 4 in the country and is in the playoffs, about to play Alabama. They did lose head coach Brian Kelly, but I believe they promoted defensive coordinator Marcus Freeman, and the players really rallied behind him. So look for that. See how they play for him, and it could be a sign of next year. And they have a big game opening up next year against Ohio State. I believe that's in Columbus as well.
Mm-hmm.
Then for Oklahoma State, they're coming off a tough loss to a really good Baylor team, in my opinion. And they're looking to end their season on a win as they take on Notre Dame. I think that Oklahoma State's going to have to score early and take a decent lead and control the pace to win the game. As seen in the Baylor game, they don't do well fighting from behind. They did bring it back, but they just could not get into the end zone on that last drive. They had 4 chances from the 2-yard line and did not get in. But I am going to go with Oklahoma State to win, 28-24, so they would be covering the +2 spread.
So moving on to my last New Year's Six bowl game is the Sugar Bowl, Baylor versus Ole Miss. Baylor's riding the wave of 2 big wins against Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. They look to take down Matt Corral and Ole Miss. Both teams are very similar in offensive and defensive statistics and points scored, points given up, total offensive yards, total defensive yards, very similar in those. Ole Miss needs to find a way to stop Abram Smith, who had nearly 1,500 yards this season, and I believe was a candidate for the Walter Camp trophy this year.
I believe so.
Baylor's going to need to slow down the pass game and make Ole Miss run the footballs there. They have a pretty widespread run game. There's not one guy who's more dominant than the other like Abram Smith is to the rest of the backs in Baylor. But Baylor needs to possess the ball, really control the tempo, and run the football. Keep Matt Corral on the sideline, and I think that's how they're going to take it. If Matt Corral plays, could be preparing for the draft. Obviously, a bowl game is not as important as his entire career in the NFL. So it's really going to depend if Matt Corral plays this game or not. And even if he does not, it's still going to be very important for Baylor to possess this ball, use Abram Smith, and really run the football, keeping that quarterback and that offense on the sideline.
Definitely. I can definitely agree with that.
So I think that's going to conclude our bowl game picks this year. And then we'll see you in the next episode when we're going to cover a little bit of the playoff seedings and our predictions there. So we'll see you then.